Hello, Uta here of Trans Widow Uta Hagen YouTube channel with a mixed bouquet that I'm going to share the screen with. Yes, I'm so pleased with my calendula, which have taken a long time to come into bloom, but I just love the red of these beeline dahlias together with the orange, of the calendula. So this is part one of our trans widow number 74. And we are going to call her Dana. Okay, number one, was his cross-dressing a revelation or your discovery? I did discover his cross-dressing and I confronted him about it. My stepdaughters, who were 6 and 7, so his daughters, who were 6 and 7, when Ray and I married, mentioned to me at least once that their mother had told them their dad used to wear her underwear. I remember thinking that perhaps their mother was just trying to make Ray look bad to the girls. And then she found out this is something entirely different. Question 2 about escalation. Did he then tell you it's under control, not frequent, and it escalated out of control? When confronted about his cross-dressing, which I recognized as a perversion and a fetish, Ray, we're calling him Ray, said he only cross-dressed when he was taking drugs. Again, we have illegal drugs as a part of the story. I'm finding that this is a relatively common thread. To the best of my knowledge, Nettie was never taking any kind of illegal drugs when we were involved. I knew that he had taken LSD before I started going out with him, and that would have been when he was still basically in his teens. I don't know if he dropped acid when he was still in high school over in Evanston, Illinois, but I do know from a friend who unfortunately had developed very bad drug and alcohol problems that he had sold Nettie LSD and dropped acid with him back before Nettie and I became an item when we were 18 and he was 20. I think this would be very interesting to know. And of course, the psychologists who don't do follow-up and don't do background information are the ones who would have to do this. I would be very interested to know how often it is that some kind of illegal drugs are in play here. Okay. So she had met him in the 1980s when Dana was 24 and he was 33. And the day they met, he said he was divorced, but found out later that he and his soon-to-be ex-wife were actually only separated. This lie should have been a red flag for me to stay far away, as it was it was a first of many lies he told me over the next 32 years. He was a recovering drug addict who had used cocaine and alcohol when they met. He had become a deeply observant Pentecostal Christian and had been in recovery for several years. He'd responded to a personal ad of mine. She said, "I won a paid personal ad from my employer, a prize during an internal company convention." Oh, well. He wrote a heartfelt note, and she was traveling so much on her job that the note, which actually had a lot of misspellings in it, her girlfriend read it to her over the phone. So it's a little bit of a comedy of errors. But I fell for his lines. He started his letter off with "Dear one in a million." Yeah, you know, and the love bombing begins. Um, all right. I responded to his letter, and the rest is history. Uh, as far as I know, he was on his best behavior throughout our courtship, which culminated in our wedding a couple of years after they met. By then, he was divorced, and he had been awarded full custody because the mother of the children was a drug addict, and her boyfriend had shot and injured Ray when he went there for picking up the girls. So this is pretty crazy. So this guy, who was a cross-dresser and recovering from cocaine and alcohol addiction, gets full custody of his kids. The kids are lucky that they had Dana, their stepmother, in their lives. Okay. They moved into a new house. This guy was a great handyman, and we were able to buy the house with only the upstairs finished and then paid off in less than 2 years, and he finished the lower level. And then, unfortunately, sometime between 88 and 90, which is just a couple years after they got married, he relapsed into drug and alcohol use. She was traveling most of the time on her job, and he did have a good job as a plant manager in a circuit board manufacturing facility. It was during this period that I first discovered his cross-dressing, but he convinced me it was something he only did when he was high on cocaine. You know, and there you are, being sort of the mother figure in these girls' lives. So there are many, many ties keeping you in this. I believed him, so most of my focus was on trying to support him as he struggled with sobriety. He relapsed many times, putting the girls and me through enormous suffering. He finally quit drugs for good in 1992 and has remained sober. We had been married for less than 5 years at that point, so I was hopeful that the hell he had put us through was finally over. I looked forward to clear sailing ahead. But not long after that, I found evidence that Ray was still, or again, cross-dressing. He couldn't blame the drugs or alcohol for his behavior this time. Now, this is just going to be the last part of part 1, because Dana was kind enough, thank you, to give us really quite a lot of details. Did he select a therapist, and did the therapist tell you that this is a lesbian relationship now? I don't remember the specific timing of the various stages Ray went through as he gradually progressed towards transition over the next 14 years, but things were up and down in our marriage, with me often worrying about and trying to figure out what he was hiding from me and lying about. It's terrible to live with this eggshell, floor suddenly when you don't know if he's started the cross-dressing again. I lived through 2.5 years of that purgatory. In 2006, he finally told me he was going to be Rachel. He had secretly been seeing a gender-affirming therapist for several months or possibly even years. Before he found this therapist who told him he needed to transition, we had seen a marriage counselor together, and Ray had seen another therapist at my urging after I told him he needed to stop cross-dressing. He agreed that he needed to stop, and we both hoped therapy would help him quit this habit. He worked at about 5 good jobs, but was ultimately fired from each one. Around 2002, he stopped looking for work. A few years before he found this gender-affirming therapist, he convinced me, and maybe himself, that all he needed to do was cross-dress now and again. So this is this whole thing about how it escalates. Indeed, the first therapist Ray saw with the supposed goal of controlling his cross-dressing seemed to believe intermittent cross-dressing was the best option for both of us. Yes, and that is what Ruth the charlatan, Nettie's therapist, tried to convince me that I could be the one kind of in charge of the schedule, and I could, keep this under control so that our marriage could continue. So this is a not uncommon thing for these mental health practitioners. We took a trip to New Orleans sometime in 2001 and had a wonderful time. I agreed to go out with him one evening and walk Bourbon Street. This is like, New Orleans on Bourbon Street is like a scene out of a Fellini movie. And Ray was cross-dressed to the nines as a woman. I decided by that point that the cross-dressing was probably mostly a harmless fetish until Ray started spending too much money on his habit. Of course, because you need the designer shoes and designer handbags to make your feet and hands look smaller. We even met other male cross-dressers who had regular club meetings, and wives were encouraged to attend the meetings now and again. Okay, so around 2006 or 7, he told me, prompted by things his therapist said to him, I'm sure. You can tell because they are always repeating these catchphrases. Yes, that they're lesbians, and he's married to a woman. I shot back something like, if I'm really a lesbian, I can find a much more attractive and desirable woman than you are. I'm sure the lesbians will be saying, brava, Dana. Oh, and she feels like this was a mean thing to say. Well, I think it's actually sort of a truthful thing to say. I finally stopped saying mean things like this because I realized staying with Ray was the best of several less than desirable options. I decided just to make the best of things because we had been together for so many years. I had also found out from consulting with an attorney that my 15 years of being the sole breadwinner meant I would likely have to pay Ray alimony if we divorced. I was absolutely stunned and still am that the law did not allow an annulment of our so-called marriage based on Ray's being a so-called woman instead of the man I thought I had married. There are other trans widows who feel they are in the same position because they are the sole or majority breadwinner. Just amazing. Oh, you'll notice my white roses, my late blooming roses. I think the variety is called Lady Godiva. And just take a look at this bouquet one more time with the calendula, the various dahlias, the lavender, and just started blooming this morning, asters. And they attract so many bees. And they're called honey something asters. Honey song pink, I think, is the name. And they do have a honey kind of a fragrance. Let's see, there it is, up there. All right, that's it for now. Part 1, Dana, Trans Widow number 74. Please like, subscribe, and share.